Welcome, deep divers. And before we get into it, let me just say Happy New Year's Eve.
Happy New Year's Eve.
It is officially the very last day of 2025.
Yeah.
And what a year it's been.
Oh, absolutely. Fascinating, challenging.
Disorienting sometimes in the world of IT and cybersecurity.
I think that's the word for it.
We're just so grateful to you, our global listeners, for trusting us all year to cut through the noise and, well, bring you these insights. So thank you for subscribing, sharing, and engaging all year. We love having you here as we look ahead to 2026.
We do. And it feels less like just a calendar page turning and more like a real strategic pivot point.
Right.
As we move into 2026, we have to admit 2025 really felt like the year everyone was just playing catch up.
Constantly on the back foot.
Especially around, the weaponization of generative AI. The next 12 months, I think, have to be about moving from that reactive state to true resilience.
And to help us frame that shift, a huge thanks to the CISO marketplace ecosystem. Their support has just been instrumental. It lets us dedicate the time to synthesize all of this dense, often conflicting source material.
It really does.
So we thank them, and of course our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com. We hope to stay connected with all of you, our listeners, throughout the new year, and it's thanks to partners like them who get the value of this kind of deep, unbiased analysis.
So our mission today, it's very targeted, it's strategic. We're synthesizing the most critical cybersecurity and IT planning priorities for the year ahead.
And this isn't just another trend report.
No, not at all. Think of it as a strategic roadmap. We're covering emerging threats, tightening identity standards, and really defining what the proof points for compliance look like now.
Our sources for this are extensive. We've got expert predictions on AI, the final release of NIST SP 863-4.
Which is a huge one.
Huge. Plus critical compliance roadmaps, especially the new mandates coming out of the SEC, and some really practical year-end checklists for businesses of any size.
And we've distilled all of that material down to one core question for you to think about as you wrap up your planning.
Okay, what is it?
How do organizations move from the frantic catch-up of 2025 to actually proving their resilience and staying ahead of what our sources are calling hyper-automated threats in 2026?
Okay, let's unpack this. And let's start with the biggest force multiplier of them all, AI. So to begin, we have to talk about this core conflict that really defines the coming year. It's not about if AI will impact security anymore. It's now the fundamental engine.
Yeah.
It's driving both offense and defense at a speed we've never seen.
That's the defining truth of 2026 planning. The sources are absolutely unanimous on this. AI has, for better or worse, democratized sophistication.
What does that mean exactly, democratized?
It means attackers are now using generative models to create incredibly convincing, targeted phishing campaigns at a massive scale.
So not just the old spray and pray emails.
Not at all. And they're automating reconnaissance on victims 24/7, generating polymorphic malware that, mutates constantly to avoid the old signature-based detection. The bottom line is the cost of launching a sophisticated attack has just plummeted.
And the defense has to match that speed.
It has to. On our side, we're leveraging AI to automate our own processes.
Yeah.
These AI-powered tools are now essential for real-time anomaly detection, for policy modeling.
For risk assessments that actually change with the threat landscape.
Exactly. It means the speed of the fight has accelerated for everyone, and the margin for human error has, it's effectively vanished.
This leads us right to what the sources are flagging as the next major threat evolution. The rise of agentic AI attacks. Can you just solidify that concept for us? What does agentic actually mean here?
Right. So agentic AI moves beyond the simple chatbot or, content generation phase we've been in.
Okay.
Think of it this way. In the past, a threat actor had to write a script that performed a very fixed series of steps.
And if anything unexpected happened, like a firewall response.
The script failed. It just stopped. And the attacker had to manually intervene, figure out what went wrong, and try again. The human was always the pivot point.
Okay, so always in the loop.
Always. Now, these agentic AI systems are predicted to execute autonomous multi-step operations with minimal human input. They don't just follow a script. They're given a goal.
A goal like what?
Like get financial data from the HR server, and then it dynamically pivots based on the feedback it gets from the target network. It can handle bypassing MFA, scanning for privilege escalation, automating lateral movement, all on its own.
So a compromised agent basically turns into a powerful, independent attack vector. It's like self-driving malware.
That's a perfect way to put it.
This is where it gets really disturbing for me. This capability completely levels the playing field, doesn't it?
It does.
If an autonomous AI can carry out a complex multi-step operation, then these sophisticated campaigns are suddenly affordable and accessible for, well, for anyone, even low-skilled actors.
Absolutely. The speed, the automation, the scale of cybercrime, that's what will define the security landscape in 2026. These attack groups are starting to operate more like efficient, venture-backed
With
companies.
specialized roles and automated tool channels.
Exactly. They measure success by throughput, the rate at which they can turn that initial access into profit. This democratization of attack capability is a huge driver for why defense has to prioritize automation and identity controls, which I know we'll get to.
And one of the most terrifying specific threats from the sources is how deepfake fraud is moving out of the consumer novelty space and directly into the corporate suite.
The game has completely changed.
So this is way beyond those static fake videos we saw in 2025.
Oh, absolutely. Deepfakes are no longer just pre-made clips. They're embedded in real-time live con calls.
Live, over Teams or Zoom.
Over Teams, Zoom, standard VoIP, you name it. Attackers are running real-time generative rendering. They're using stolen meeting recordings, CRM data, public communications, anything to train their voice models.
And they're using emotion matching models. What does that do?
It ensures the synthetic voice sounds stressed or urgent or annoyed to match the context of whatever fraudulent request they're making.
So they're not just mimicking the words, they're mimicking the nuance, the hesitation, the pacing, the emotion behind it.
That's what makes it nearly impossible for a human to detect. They can simulate a CFO's voice on a critical call right down to their breathing pattern.
And the sources say the timing is key.
Timing is everything. These attacks often hit during moments of peak stress. A transaction approval late on a Friday, a simulated crisis, a time when a senior leader is supposedly traveling. In those moments, who stops to ask for a secondary authentication method?
Almost no one. And the sources mentioned this shocking detail about combining the fake with geolocation spoofing. Why is that combo so deadly?
Because it's the final layer of psychological manipulation. The attacker combines the convincing voice and face with tools that make them appear physically in office or on-site.
So if I'm a finance associate, I get a request from my CFO. I hear her voice, her specific stress cadence.
And you see her location data seems to match her travel itinerary. The level of perceived legitimacy just skyrockets to nearly 100%. The result is a full, live, high-pressure con that looks, sounds, and contextually feels completely legitimate.
And this isn't sci-fi, it's happening now.
Right now.
We've already seen the consequences, especially for small and mid-sized businesses that don't have those deep verification layers.
That's right. The sources cite a lot of examples, especially with platform governance. Small businesses losing control of their verified Facebook business pages, their LinkedIn profiles.
Oh, wow.
Attackers use cloned voices and spoofed identities to trick the platform admins who have elevated access into sharing credentials or transferring rights. And this is a critical point. Platform-level authentication becomes functionally irrelevant when human trust is manipulated so thoroughly.
That's a fundamental challenge. The very transparency executives build through social media, publishing all that video and voice content.
It's being weaponized against them. It's providing the training data for these synthetic models. Every public keynote is feeding the engine that will be used to defraud their own company.
So beyond direct deception, the sources also point to a much more subtle threat: data poisoning and model manipulation.
The silent saboteur. This is a long-term strategic threat.
So instead of attacking the system, they're corrupting the AI model itself.
Exactly. If the AI model is the brain of your operation, the system that decides if a transaction is fraudulent or if a loan should be approved, the criminals are just feeding it tainted data so it makes subtly wrong decisions later on, decisions that benefit the attacker.
And how does that poisoning happen? Are they hacking a database?
It's often subtler than that. They'll sneak malicious records into public datasets used to train open source models, or they'll corrupt a vendor-fed data pipeline. The goal isn't immediate chaos, it's long-term influence.
For example,
Poisoning a fraud detection model to ignore certain transaction patterns that the attacker plans to exploit 6 months from now. It's a supply chain attack on knowledge.
which highlights a huge organizational silo problem. This sits right between the data science teams, who worry about model accuracy, and security teams, who worry about breaches.
It absolutely does. The sources strongly recommend that this silo needs to be formally addressed in 2026. You need a unified governance structure to secure the entire data pipeline, from ingestion to deployment. If you can't trust the data your AI is trained on, you can't trust its output.
So with this overwhelming landscape of hyper-automated, deception-focused threats, what's the immediate defense plan? How do organizations even stand a chance?
The strategy has to center on removing that human weak link from the authentication process and beefing up internal verification. First, and this is non-negotiable, invest heavily in phishing-resistant authentication.
We're talking passkeys, FIDO2 keys.
Yes, deployed especially for high-risk roles, admins, anyone touching financial systems.
That shifts the burden of security away from the human brain, which is terrible at spotting deepfakes, and onto a physical or cryptographic token.
Correct. But technology isn't enough. Second, every organization needs rigorous, out-of-band verification for any request involving payments or critical data. It doesn't matter who the caller appears to be.
So if the CEO calls for a wire transfer,
the finance team needs a secondary, non-virtual channel to confirm it. A pre-agreed code word, a text to a verified number. And that process has to be mandatory and auditable.
and finally, using our own AI for defense, but with a human touch.
Exactly. Third, deploy AI-driven threat detection platforms that specialize in pattern drift and anomalies. AI can spot things a human analyst would miss at scale, but, and the sources stress this, it must have human oversight. We still need analysts to review those low-confidence anomalies where new attacker TTPs often appear first.
Okay, that's a clear mandate for fighting AI deception. Let's shift now to the core defensive philosophy for 2026, which is identity. We've basically established that the old network perimeters have failed. Stolen credentials are the gateway in over 80% of successful breaches, according to our sources.
The shift is complete. It's irreversible. Identity, the user, the device, the context of the access, that has become the most critical security boundary.
It's the new perimeter.
It is. With remote work and cloud blurring all the lines, things like passkeys and adaptive MFA, combined with continuous risk scoring, they're not nice-to-haves anymore. They are essential.
So, zero trust is no longer a buzzword. It's just the baseline operating procedure now.
It's evolving very quickly from a concept to standard practice. In 2026, organizations are under pressure to show measurable, ongoing initiatives, not just small pilot programs.
And how do you implement it effectively? Where do you start?
You have to start by mapping your critical data flows, identify the crown jewels, how they're accessed, and then apply the principle of least privilege at every single hop.
I have to challenge this a little because least privilege sounds great on a slide, but in a large, messy legacy environment, it's a terrifying project.
It is. It's politically difficult, and that's where governance comes in. Least privilege means you tear down old assumptions. You don't trust a user just because they logged onto the network.
Access is based only on their verified identity, what they need at that exact moment.
And the continuous verification of their device health. If you're an accountant, you should not have access to engineering code, period.
And this reliance on context requires a massive shift in network structure.
Absolutely. It relies on identity-based segmentation, not old static network zones. And you have to actively monitor internal traffic, that east-west traffic, because that's where lateral movement happens in a breach. Catching those policy violations in real time is the whole objective.
Okay, so a practical step here is microsegmentation. It comes up constantly. What's the real ROI on that? Because it sounds like a complex, expensive project.
It is complex. The sources don't shy away from that, but the ROI is extremely high because the cost of failure is catastrophic.
And the sources say over 70% of attacks involve lateral movement.
Right. So microsegmentation drastically limits an attacker's ability to move around once they're inside. It's the ultimate containment strategy.
So you're changing a potential 7-figure breach into a contained, maybe 4-figure incident.
That's the goal. By implementing these granular controls, you turn a network-wide disruption into a small, contained incident. And financially, sources suggest a typical 12-month payback period on these projects, just from reduced breach costs and better compliance. That's what gets it over the line.
So looking at the budget for zero trust adoption in 2026, where should organizations put their money to get that ROI?
The sources show a very clear focus. Network segmentation, that's microsegmentation, and ZTNA should get a critical 15 to 20% of the zero trust budget.
That's where you enforce the policies.
Exactly. But the foundation of it all is identity and access management. That's another 10 to 15%. That money goes into phishing-resistant MFA, privileged access management, identity governance tools, all the things that address the fact that stolen credentials are still the #1 attack vector.
This brings us perfectly to a major update. NIST SP 863-4. the finalized digital identity guidelines. This isn't just a government doc, is it?
No, it's the de facto global standard. And this update is crucial because it moves the entire industry away from a static checklist approach.
Just ticking boxes for MFA or password length.
Right. It moves us to a dynamic, risk-based management model, which NIST calls the Digital Identity Risk Management, or DIRM, framework. For 2026, it's moving into required implementation for a lot of federal and regulated industry contracts.
So it's less about doing things one specific way and more about dynamically picking the right security for the risk of that transaction.
Precisely. The goal is to dynamically select the right identity assurance level, authenticator assurance level, and so on, based on a continuous evaluation of threats, data sensitivity, and the potential impact of a compromise. It's an adaptive standard for an adaptive threat.
Let's get into the key technical updates that organizations have to implement in 2026 based on this.
The first major one is a direct response to the AI threat we just talked about. Phishing resistance is now the baseline.
The required baseline.
Yes. SP 800-634 strongly promotes phishing-resistant authenticators, FIDO passkeys, hardware tokens for authenticator assurance levels 2 and 3. So if you're securing sensitive systems, relying on SMS codes is just not sufficient anymore.
Okay, I have to push back here. Phishing-resistant MFA is fantastic, but the operational challenge of rolling out hardware tokens or migrating millions of users to passkeys is immense. It's costly.
The sources acknowledge the pain, but they stress that the risk reduction outweighs the implementation cost. The key is to prioritize. Start with your high-risk users and high-impact systems first. And the standard is technology agnostic. You can leverage things like biometric fire keys built into mobile devices to ease the transition. But the mandate to move away from phishable MFA is non-negotiable for higher assurance levels.
What about new tech? The world is moving toward decentralized identity. Does NIST see that?
It does. The guidelines fully recognize user-controlled digital wallets, verifiable credentials, mobile driver's licenses.
So a system could accept a verified assertion from a digital wallet, like your age, without needing a physical ID.
Exactly. It also recognizes remote identity proofing like video or biometric verification as a valid way to achieve identity assurance level 2, which makes secure onboarding much more scalable.
The emphasis is clearly on ongoing effectiveness, not just setup. So let's walk through the 5 steps of this new DARM process. This is the framework organizations have to adopt.
This is the operational engine. Step 1 is to define the online service. And this isn't just naming the app.
Yep.
It means detailed documentation of its scope, user groups, critical transactions, every entity that would be impacted by a compromise. It forces you to meticulously map your environment.
Sounds like a prerequisite for zero trust. Okay, step 2.
Step 2 is conduct the initial impact assessment. This is where you evaluate the potential harm across specific categories. Financial loss, mission degradation, reputational damage, legal exposure. It has to be both quantitative and qualitative.
And once you know the potential impact, you can select the security requirements.
Which is step 3. Select initial assurance levels for IAL, AAL, and FAL based directly on that impact assessment. You're matching the rigor to the risk.
But it allows for adaptation. It's not rigid.
Exactly, which is why step 4 is critical. Tailor and document assurance level determinations. Maybe you selected AAL3, which requires a hardware key, but that creates too much friction for a low-impact transaction. You can justify tailoring it down, but that justification must be documented, transparent, and defensible to an auditor.
It prevents security from becoming a barrier to business.
Right. And finally, step 5. Continuously evaluate and improve. This means monitoring metrics like fraud rates, tracking new threats, and making ongoing improvements. The goal is to ensure the system stays effective not just today, but against the evolving threats of 2026 and beyond.
Okay, we've laid out the technical need for identity and zero trust. But none of that matters if the board isn't bought in and the auditors don't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
If 2025 was the year of scrambling, the sources are crystal clear. 2026 is the year of proving it through governance and compliance.
The fundamental shift is that compliance is now synonymous with evidence and accountability. A signed policy binder isn't enough anymore.
They want proof.
They expect proof of active, continuous maintenance. We're talking documented training logs, verified test reports, measurable outcomes from continuous monitoring. It's not paperwork, it's verifiable evidence.
And this proof problem has serious financial consequences, not just regulatory fines.
They're severe and immediate. The first one is lost revenue from delayed contracts. Clients now require a SOC2 report or ISO 27001 certification before they'll sign.
And the data backs this up.
It does. A survey we analyzed showed nearly half, 47% of respondents said a lack of certification delayed their sales cycles. 38% lost a competitive bid entirely because of it. Compliance is now a gatekeeper to revenue.
So not being compliant isn't just a risk, it's a competitive disadvantage. What are the other consequences?
Beyond lost revenue, there are huge insurance implications. Companies are facing claim denials or much higher premiums if they can't prove critical controls were in place and maintained before a breach.
So the insurers are demanding proof before paying out.
They are. And then, of course, you have the fines from the FTC, IPA, and all the data privacy laws. The cost of non-compliance is rapidly outpacing the cost of proactive investment.
Let's focus on the financial services sector. The SEC's FY 2026 priorities are tightening dramatically. What are they targeting?
The SEC has a renewed, very focused agenda on cybersecurity, investor privacy under Regulation XP, and operational resiliency. They are pushing firms beyond just disclosure and into demonstrable, verifiable control.
The immediate action item here seems to be the Reg SP amendments. When is the deadline and what's required?
The deadline is coming up fast. For larger entities, it's February 2, 2026. These new rules require them to develop, implement, and maintain rigorous written incident response programs.
And what must those programs guarantee for customer information?
They have to be designed to detect, respond to, and recover from unauthorized access. But critically, the program must include procedures for providing timely individual notification to affected customers.
That emphasis on timely notification is the sharp edge.
It is. It means the clock starts ticking as soon as there's a reasonable likelihood of unauthorized access. It's not enough to be quietly recovering anymore. You have to be communicating. And regulators are explicitly reviewing those communication plans.
It forces legal, PR, and tech to coordinate from minute one.
It has to. And the SEC is also focusing on AI. Their priorities explicitly include reviewing firms' policies for monitoring and supervising AI technologies used in mission-critical functions.
So everything from fraud prevention to trading algorithms.
Everything. They want assurance that the algorithms are consistent with the firm's regulatory obligations and don't introduce unmanaged systemic risk.
Stepping away from the SEC, let's talk ISO 27001. A lot of global organizations use this as their benchmark. If a business is going for certification in 2026, what's essential for the audit?
You have to start by understanding the two audit types. You have your internal audits, the continuous self-checks to find and fix gaps. Then you have the external audit by a certified body, which is the gateway to certification.
And what does that external process actually involve?
It's a rigorous two-stage process. Stage 1 is the documentation review. The auditor reviews your information security management system, your ISMS, to make sure it aligns with the standard. They check your policies, your scope, your risk assessment methodology. Basically, is the paperwork in order?
And stage 2 is to see if the paperwork is real.
Stage 2 is the full implementation check. This is where the auditor confirms your documented policies are actually working in practice. They will interview employees, not just managers. They'll ask, show me how you report a security incident, or where are the policies relevant to your job? They are checking the organizational culture.
So what are the absolute checklist essentials for a business getting ready for this?
You have to clearly define your ISMS scope. You must conduct a thorough, evidence-based risk assessment, document every policy, and crucially, train your staff and meticulously collect evidence.
Evidence like what?
Training logs, attendance sheets, incident reports, penetration test results, and your statement of applicability. If you can't prove you trained your staff to an auditor, that policy is useless.
Now that we've covered the compliance drivers, let's look at funding. We have a breakdown of the 2026 cybersecurity budget. Where's the money going?
Software and security tools are still the biggest slice, at roughly 40%. This is driven by platform consolidation, getting away from dozens of siloed tools, and the huge investment needed for AI-driven defense platforms.
And what about the human element? With the skills gap, are companies investing more in their people?
Internal personnel is stable at about 30%, and that stable number really reflects the talent shortage. Companies want to hire more, but they can't fill the positions.
The global skills gap is what, almost 5 million unfilled jobs?
It is, which forces organizations to look outside. That's why outsourced services is increasing, now around 15% of the budget. This is specifically for filling immediate skills gaps, cloud security, AI governance, zero trust experts, and providing 24/7 monitoring that most companies can't staff internally.
So the successful programs are managing a three-part balancing act.
They are. The ideal budget for 2026 is about 40 to 50% on technology, 30 to 40% on personnel, which includes retention and upskilling, and 10 to 20% on process and governance, which funds things like IR testing and compliance audits. It ensures your shiny new tools actually have skilled people to run them and solid processes to govern them.
We've covered the threat landscape, the compliance mandate. Now let's get into the practical, proactive playbook for 2026. Priority 1, closing legacy gaps. The old stuff. Why are dusty, years-old vulnerabilities suddenly priority number 1?
This is maybe the most profound consequence of AI in defense. Attackers are now using AI models to automatically generate high-quality exploit scripts for vulnerabilities that are years old.
So a patch that was rated medium back in 2021.
Is now a critical vulnerability because an attacker can generate the exploit code for it in seconds. This fundamentally changes the definition of a critical asset overnight.
Wow.
Once the exploit is automated and widely available, the risk score just skyrockets. So legacy Windows systems, old Linux kernels, things that were maybe deprioritized because they were too hard to exploit, now need critical attention.
Okay, so what's the action item? We can't just drop everything and patch the entire estate.
The sources recommend a multi-pronged approach. You have to conduct comprehensive year-end vulnerability scans with a specific focus on these older, medium-rated exposures. And critically, you have to scan those rarely touched production-critical devices.
The operational technology, the manufacturing systems?
Exactly. The things that are often seen as too fragile to patch.
And how do we manage the sheer volume of this? It sounds endless.
Automation is mission critical. If your patch cycle still depends on manual handoffs and ticketing, you are perpetually behind. The goal has to be reducing that exposure window from weeks or months down to hours.
So the vulnerability detection, patch orchestration, and asset management systems all have to talk to each other automatically.
Seamlessly, to eliminate those manual handoffs and build a truly resilient patching program.
Okay, moving on to the new perimeter, identity. Priority 2 is auditing access and credentials. A quick win. Why is this so crucial right now?
The simple fact is, most successful breaches hide behind valid credentials. The attackers aren't breaking in, they're logging in.
Using an account that should have been disabled or was stolen months ago.
Right, so the only giveaway is pattern drift, anomalous behavior. A valid account suddenly starts downloading unusual data or accessing strange servers. Your log analysis has to be behavioral now.
So what's on the year-end checklist for this?
A few high-impact wins. First, immediately tighten permissions for all high-privilege users, domain admins, cloud admins, and review their access quarterly. Second, enforce MFA everywhere, no exceptions, using phishing-resistant methods where you can.
And cleaning up old accounts.
Absolutely. Do a full audit to confirm former employees and partners have zero access. And finally, implement an aggressive, automated policy to disable stale accounts after 30 days of inactivity. Clean up that landscape of dormant access points.
Priority 3, incident response readiness. What's the foundation of an effective IR program?
The IR policy is the absolute foundation, and it has to be separate from the operational plan because the policy defines governance, accountability, and communication. It's a high-level strategic document.
It has to be approved by leadership.
CEO, CFO, legal. Everyone has to sign off to ensure full business buy-in. It's the blueprint for navigating a crisis under extreme pressure.
Let's detail the 5-step response procedure that every team needs to drill. What are the steps, and why is the distinction between containment and eradication so important?
Okay, step 1 is identification. Monitoring alerts, triaging reports, assessing severity, and documenting everything. Step 2 is containment. This is the immediate action, stopping the spread, isolating systems, segmenting traffic. And the source of stress, organizations often fail here by confusing containment with eradication. They rush the cleanup.
So if you contain too aggressively, you might destroy forensic evidence. Too slowly, the attacker moves laterally.
Precisely. Step 3 is eradication. This is where you find the root cause, remove the malware, patch the vulnerability, reset credentials, and rebuild from guaranteed clean backups. Containment stops the bleeding. Eradication removes the infection. Step 4 is recovery, bringing clean systems back online in a controlled way with enhanced monitoring. And finally, step 5, lessons learned. Document what worked, what failed, and formally revise your procedures based on those insights. The policy has to mandate these reviews.
Speaking of real-world insights, that leads perfectly into our 4th and final priority, testing resilience with tabletop exercises. You fight the way you train. What's the strategic value here beyond just the tech side?
The strategic value is forcing that cross-functional coordination and exposing your blind spots before a real attacker does.
Right.
And these simulations have to involve legal, PR, HR, and executives. A breach is a business crisis, not just an IT problem.
Let's run through some of the illustrative scenarios the sources recommend for 2026.
One critical scenario is ransomware via an IoT device. This simulates a small vulnerability, an unsecured sensor or camera that leads to catastrophic disruption. It tests your asset inventory and OT recovery plans.
What about the human element with all this deception?
You have to run a social engineering attack scenario, a fraudulent transfer using deepfake context. This tests your financial controls and out-of-band verification. Another one is an insider threat, ransomware initiated by a disgruntled employee. This focuses on early warning signs and monitoring for behavioral drift. And finally, you have to test for C-suite compromise, the smartphone compromise with SIM swapping scenario. This is where attackers take over an exec's mobile number to bypass MFA.
It forces them to feel the pressure of the crisis.
And it tests how you handle account recovery for high-value users when their personal device becomes the gateway to corporate data. All these tests prove that security awareness, backed by continuous testing, is a survival skill in 2026. So if we synthesize all of this material, the biggest takeaway is this. The defining challenge for 2026 is balancing that rapid digital innovation, AI, cloud, IoT, with rigorous continuous security controls.
Right.
The focus has to be on identity as the non-negotiable perimeter and using these governance mandates to enforce continuous verification that's backed by irrefutable evidence.
You saw that automation is now the engine for both sides, offense and defense. And compliance is a business enabler, a revenue generator, not just a cost center.
Exactly. Security awareness, automation, and adaptability. That's the real armor for the new year. The time for static checklist security is over.
Organizations that shift from sporadic assessments to a continuous operating model, one that tests and validates resilience regularly, they'll be the ones that succeed.
They'll be the ones best positioned for sustained innovation in the face of these hyper-automated threats.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you finalize your 2026 strategy? With AI accelerating the speed of everything, how will your organization truly measure success in the coming year? Will it be defined by your innovation speed, or by the speed at which you detect and contain the inevitable breach?
That's the strategic tension to think about.
It is. That's the thought to mull over as the clock ticks down to a new year.
Speed of containment really is the new metric of resilience, a powerful thought.
Thank you so much for participating in this deep dive. And remember, all these insights came directly from the source material, synthesized to give you the most critical strategic roadmap for 2026.
We're so grateful for your support as we ring in the new year.
Stay safe and stay vigilant.
And have a wonderful new year.
And a huge thank you one last time to the CISO Marketplace ecosystem and our sponsor, www.cisomarketplace.com, for making this essential analysis possible all through 2025. We look forward to connecting with all of you throughout 2026. Happy New Year!